In December 2018, I launched a series based on the Nintendo Switch title Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The series was made to document my progress as a competitive Super Smash Bros. Player, and I wanted to achieve one goal. I wanted to meet the creator of the game, Masahiro Sakurai. I believed that that would be an achievable goal if I were to compete for long enough, earn high enough rankings, and gain enough recognition as a talented Super Smash Bros. Competitor. As such, the series became known as Road to Sakurai. Each episode was meant to serve as some sort of time capsule or journal entry that showcased myself competing in a tourney or discussing some important aspect or topic regarding the game. And now that the game and Road to Sakurai have been out for over a year, it's time to see just how different Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is now compared to when it first launched all that time ago. So many things have changed. We have new characters, new stages, new balance patches, and I've had so many new experiences for myself. But that raises many questions. Have I grown at all as a competitive player? Have I gotten any closer to my goal? What have I learned along the way? And is there any hope for me going forward? It's time to evaluate the past so I can perform better in the future. For this episode, I'm going to summarize my year with Smash as a whole and see where I've improved and where I'm struggling, if I've even improved at all. So let's take a look at the first year of my Smash journey. What have I accomplished in a year? Hello humans, I'm Yoshiller, and welcome to another episode of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Road to Sakurai! Yeah, this game has been out for a year already, and while I've definitely been having a blast with the game for the past 12 months, I've admittedly not created as many videos for the game as I would have preferred. I wanted to try and create a new Road to Sakurai video every week, or every other week, but the most reasonable outcome turned out to be that I'd only get one video out a month or so. This led to a couple of scrapped episodes and some ideas for the series that never came to fruition, but even so, I'm satisfied with what the series has become up to this point. And let's go down the list of major events that have occurred so far. I'll elaborate on certain topics later in this video, but the general summary of everything goes as follows. I got the game, I traveled to a tourney within the first week of the game's launch, I went to another tourney where I was publicly humiliated, I continued to perform poorly at tourneys for a bit, I tried looking into alternative options on how to perform better, DLC for the game started to roll out, I tried to adapt to the rapidly changing environment of the competitive scene, I started to perform a bit better at tourneys, and I began to understand how to better compete in this game. I've lost and lost and lost and lost and lost, and yet, my overall results haven't been too bad. And that's part of the reason that I'm glad that I've been documenting everything for the sake of a YouTube series. From an editing standpoint, I've streamlined a fair share of assets for Road to Sakurai so that each episode can still appear to be decently flashy, while also still maintaining an overall simplistic visual style. Episodes of the series don't typically take too long to edit, the difficult part is just finding the time to edit anything at all. But even so, I feel as though I've actually succeeded in making each episode stand out with its own little story and topic, while not getting too stressed out as I create each episode. From the game's launch to now, I've created 15 episodes of Road to Sakurai, and I feel as though each one was an important video to make for the sake of documenting my journey as a competitive Smash player and testing my skills as a video editor. And for those of you that haven't watched every single episode of this series, I want you to know that I've made it my goal to try and modify the intro of this series in some way with every single episode. This way, I have very apparent visual forms of growth throughout the series. If we take the intro for the first episode and compare it to the intro of the 15th episode, you'll notice that the latter intro has so much more going on, and that's simply due to the fact that so much has changed between the first episode and the 15th episode. Just look at my hair color, it's not black anymore. I'm back to my natural brown, baby. But more notably, I found a fourth character to play in the form of Banjo, or as the character is officially called, Banjo and Kazooie. But I just called the character Banjo for brevity's sake. I tried out other characters, but Banjo was just the most natural fit. I also competed in all sorts of tourneys, both local and major, and I met all sorts of talented Smash players and competitors along the way. And these days, whenever I play, I'm definitely performing more advanced tactics as each character as if these tactics were second nature to me. I try to play about an hour of Smash each night, and I tend to record each match that I play. And after examining some of my more recent footage, some of the stuff that I'm doing in more modern matches is much more advanced, for the lack of a better word, than the stuff I was doing back then. I can't quite line the footage up side by side, but believe me when I say that I play very differently now than I did a year ago. I've even had episodes of this series dedicated to me just practicing certain techniques with each character, and now I'm doing most of those techniques fairly regularly. B-reversing as Yoshi used to be something that stumped me, but now I just perform it regularly. Desyncing with ice climbers? It's still fairly tricky for me, but I now have a better understanding of the desync mechanic than I did a year ago, and I can perform a few combos. And speaking of combos, my Little Mac? Well, my recovery with him is much less predictable, and I've beaten some tough opponents using Little Mac. And I've even successfully chained attacks and led my opponents into match-ending blows on multiple occasions. And as for Banjo, I mean, he can use some work, but I've been practicing with him and I feel pretty confident with him these days too. Now with all of that said, I'm far from calling myself a top player. I'm not even close to the top, but I do feel comfortable saying that I've gotten better. I'll still lose to just about any character in the game, but I've at least gotten somewhat better at identifying why I'm losing and what I'm doing wrong. Oftentimes, I'll just be far too predictable and my opponents will read every one of my movements. But before, there were many situations where I just flat out didn't know what to do. I feel like I ran out of options. Now I feel like I have access to more options and hey, sometimes they'll work and sometimes they won't. That's what Smash is. If my opponent outsmarts me, then good on my opponent. But I'm happy to say that there are becoming fewer and fewer situations where I just don't know what to do. I'm generally willing to adapt, and I think I've gotten better at adapting overall. That is, except for when I face off against more defensive characters. In a previous Road to Sakurai video, I discussed the idea of categorizing the various playable characters within Smash. One of the categories I created was called the defensive category. This category typically refers to characters that prefer to play matches at a large distance from their opponents, and most defensive characters usually rely on projectiles or long-range attacks to win. Simon, Richter, Snake, Samus, and Ness are all defensive characters by my definition. And while there are plenty of characters that can be played defensively, the characters that I mentioned are practically defensive by their design. Simon and Richter just love to throw stuff all over the screen, and their signature weapon is a whip. Snake loves to set grenades and mines everywhere. Samus is infamous for the fact that she loves to run over to one side of the screen, charge up an attack, and then launch it at you when you try to get close. And have you ever seen a Ness who didn't use PK Fire? I think the biggest problem that I have as a Smash player is that I just don't really know how to approach opponents that rely on defensive tactics. I typically fare better against characters of other categories because I have an easier time getting up in their faces. But if I can't get close to my opponent, then I'm not entirely sure what I should do. Yoshi, Ice Climbers, and Little Mac all rely on getting close to their opponent and landing massive damage, and while Banjo can space out my opponents a bit, I still feel like I need to get in close with him too to do anything noteworthy. I was fortunate enough to come across a high-level Snake player named Omart when I attended EVO 2019, and he gave me some great advice on how to defeat Snake when I play as Yoshi, but even then, I just still have trouble adapting to a more defensive playstyle. I need to understand what to do against players who know how to properly space themselves and throw projectiles everywhere, and know when I'm going to punch and when their traps are going to work on me. This is something I hope to improve on throughout 2020. I need to know how to deal with more defensive characters. But it's a bit difficult for me to just magically perform better against certain fighters when I don't get to go against those certain fighters that often. And thus, that leads me into my next topic. What's the best thing I can do to practice? Well, here's what I've been doing throughout the year. When Super Smash Bros. Ultimate first came out, I was very quick to try and join major tourneys before everyone truly learned the mechanics of the game. I called it the Wild West. Although I performed decently enough at the first tourney I ever entered, I had a hard realization that I barely understood the game at all. My method of practicing then, and even now, has been to play against random players online. It's the most convenient method of practicing most of the time, but I acknowledge that this option poses its own problems. On the one hand, I can keep playing matches until I'm tired. I get to play the game in the comfort of my own home, and I'm able to easily record the matches that I play. It doesn't take too long for me to find an opponent, and I can easily play a dozen or so matches in about an hour's time. And generally speaking, I usually get to play the rules that I set. However, there are plenty of downsides to using Smash's online modes as a way of practicing. For starters, well, there's no real nice way to say this, but a lot of the Smash players that I've found have sour attitudes. I've encountered plenty of players who will disconnect toward the end of a match while they're losing just so that they don't have to lose any points on their overall power ranking. And then there are the times where I'll find a Smash player who will have a different set of rules than what I set. And that's fine, I'll be a good sport, I'll play by my opponent's rules, but then I'll start winning, and then my opponent just won't want to play with me anymore. Come on, dude, you set these rules, not me. I'm just playing tactically. And then I'll get kicked from a match because my opponent chose to stop playing. Really? I just want to play Smash, man. And that's not even addressing some of the laggy matches that I play or matches where the input delay is just absolutely abysmal. And I've been knocked in and out of Elite Smash so many times, and honestly, I'm not noticing much of a difference between players that are in Elite Smash and those that aren't. In fact, I'm inclined to say that I've played more sour matches in Elite Smash, so I don't mind getting knocked out of Elite Smash every once in a while. But I am happy to say that playing online is not a complete waste of my time. I'm still able to play against players that have made me realize my mistakes, I'm still able to find matches fairly quickly, and even between matches I practice B-reversing as Yoshi a lot. I've had more good online matches than bad online matches. And if I'm lucky enough to have my opponent stick around for more than one match, I'm able to adapt and learn accordingly. And as I mentioned earlier, practicing this way at least allows me to record footage for these videos more easily. The other method of practice that I have simply comes from attending tourneys. Sometimes I'll have time before or after a tourney begins to play a few friendly matches against other competitors. I believe that this is the best method for me to practice. But the problem with this is that I don't attend tourneys every single day. I attend a local tourney known as Wednesday Night Fights once a week, and then I'll attend a major event every once in a while after that, but that's all the local practice I typically get. Practicing locally will always be better than practicing online, but unfortunately, playing this way is just not optimal. There are plenty of other players at these events that want to practice too, and sometimes I'll lose so quickly to an opponent that I'll need to hop off a station and let someone else play before I can even learn anything. And sometimes I just don't have as much time to practice locally as I want to. When I'm practicing online, I can play a match in between editing videos or downloading footage. But at an event, I really have to commit time to practice. I've considered some alternative options, such as trying to meet up with other high-level players, but for one reason or another, a lot of my plans for this method just didn't work out. And this is probably an idea that's best saved for a topic in another video anyway, but I did want to make it clear that I've considered this option. So more often than not, I'm on my own, looking for the best way to practice, and that usually resorts to me going home and practicing against online players. I'll admit that I don't actually practice in the game's training mode that often though. I'll use it every once in a while, namely to practice with ice climbers, but I mainly stopped using it because I prefer to play against human players rather than computers. And I feel like training mode is great for practicing specific combos, but not so much for practicing my own reactions toward attacks and overall adaptability. But maybe looking into training mode isn't such a bad idea. But each method of practice is still practice, so each method has definitely helped. My skill as a player has improved, and the evidence for this can be seen in my overall tourney results throughout the year. Early on in my competitive career, besides the first tourney I entered, I was consistently going 0-2 or 1-2 at tourneys. The first tourney I ever attended, I went 2-2. Not a bad score, and I got into the top 16, but I was still clueless about many mechanics within the game. And my cluelessness is ultimately what knocked me out of the tournament. And as I would continue to attend other tourneys just a week or two later, I would still continue to be clueless and I would still get annihilated fairly quickly. I was not great, and I was losing to just about every character. But as time went on, my scores started to get slightly higher, and then they became slightly more consistent. Now, if we count my most recent tourney results at Congo Saga, I did technically go 0-2 in the main bracket. However, I was then placed into a 500-player tourney known as the Amateur Bracket, and from there, I ranked into the top 48. And that's something I've generally noticed. I'm not really losing to newer players anymore. Nowadays, I'm mostly losing to high-ranking players, and the logic for that makes sense. See, in competitive events, it's common for high-level players to automatically be placed into the second round of a tournament bracket. I've even automatically been placed into the second round of a bracket a couple times. That usually leaves lower-ranking players to duke it out in the first round, and more often than not, most lower-ranking players are newcomers. And so, if most top players are placed into the second round of a bracket and I'm placed into the first round of a bracket, it's likely that I'll be going against a newcomer. And I can safely say that I can often defeat newcomer players now. So these days, I don't usually have a difficult time passing at least one round in a tourney. But then, in the second round, I may go against a more advanced player who can sweep the floor with me. Sometimes I'll surprise myself. I may take a game off a top-level player, and I may even make it into the third round of an event before I even lose once. I'll still encounter players who'll sweep the floor with me, and I'll still make tons and tons of mistakes. But the fun of competing is that sometimes I think I'll win and I'll wind up losing, and sometimes I think I'll lose, but I'll wind up winning. I've had the honor of facing off against a ton of pro players, and I've held my ground a few times. And even if I lose, the fact that I can say that I almost won feels good enough to me. And if I take a game off of somebody, then that's just even better. I've even had to incorporate a new rule into my lifestyle. I had to call it the 2-2 rule. In short, I wasn't allowed to reward myself with a treat or a souvenir unless I defeated at least 2 opponents before I was eliminated at an event. And the fact that I was able to incorporate that rule should show that I've improved as a player. 2-2 was the first score I ever got, but I wasn't able to consistently get that until I played the game for several months. Then, I was able to consistently get 2-2 scores. And now, my best result at an event, excluding my top 48 rank at Congo Saga's amateur bracket, is a 3-2 result at Wednesday Night Fights. And that's not counting buys or free rounds either. That's saying that I defeated 3 players at one event. In my opinion, that's pretty good. And if it means anything to anyone, my overall ranking as a player in the SoCal region in 2019 is 590th out of 12,560 registered players. Aw yeah, top 5%, baby! My overall tourney results throughout the year did fluctuate a bit, but as the year went on, my results did get higher and they did become more consistent. But now I fear that earning these decent enough rankings may warp my personality and my sense of understanding of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I may talk like I know what's going on in this game, but really I don't. I still have so much to learn. I don't really understand hitboxes or frame data, and I don't know who wins in most matchups. But my fear is that I might let this go to my head. I might keep saying, yeah, I can go 2-2 or 3-2 at events, and then still get bodied by the same players by making the same mistakes. I have a better understanding of the game now than I did a year ago, but I don't want to get an inflated ego over a 3-2 victory. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud of my results, and I'm happy that there's been a noticeable improvement in my tourney results. But if I ever come off as egotistical, please stop me. That's not who I want to be. It's nice to see that there's been some sort of positive development in my journey. And when I lose, I'm often losing to top players who will get top 8 or top 4 at events. So it's kind of flattering to think that the person who defeated me was so remarkable in the first place. I am getting better, and I believe that as long as I keep at it and learn new tricks, I can continue to improve. My first year as a competitor for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has been a positive one. I've met many friendly and talented players who have taught me a lot, and they've helped me enjoy my experience throughout my time with the game. And I've had the honor of competing against so many amazing players. I'm regularly performing attacks and strategies now that were beyond my grasp in the past, and I feel more confident in my playstyle against many of the game's characters. But whatever I do now won't change what happened in the past. I still need to find more efficient ways to practice the game, and I still need to better learn how to approach more defensive characters. But I've already been through a fair share of hurdles with the game, and I might still go 0-2 at events, but I hope that that no longer will be consistent. And if I was able to endure all these trials of the past, then maybe I can still endure a few more trials for the future. My journey isn't over yet, and it won't be over until I one day meet Masahiro Sakurai. And whether I meet the man within a week or in a year, I will keep competing, and I will keep striving to improve as a player. And if nothing else, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the game. I've had a ton of fun just playing the game with friends and making videos on different subject matters. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate means a lot to me. And in just a year's time, it's already changed my life so much. So if there's anything I really should say in a video like this, then it's thank you. Thank you to Masahiro Sakurai and the development team for creating such an impactful game. And thank you to those of you who have decided to watch this video and join me on my journey. To think that so much has happened already and there's still so much more yet to come. We'll see what year number 2 brings us. And I look forward to seeing where this journey is headed next. Bye-bye, humans. Whoosh.